Hey everybody, welcome back to my series of videos covering Silent Hill 2. So, we're gonna start off with the basics of how this works within the lore of Silent Hill. This is something I mentioned at the end of my previous video, but we're gonna tie the story of Silent Hill 2 to Silent Hill 1 and 3. So, in short, here's the situation from Silent Hill 1. Little girl gets sacrificed, essentially, as part of a ritual to summon a god. Now, not sacrificed in terms of being killed, but put through a significant amount of pain over a long period of time. And since she is incubating the god of this town and summoning monsters and so on and so forth, she's the basis for the entirety of the supernatural events within the town, and therefore many of the things that you see are based on stuff from within her mind and within her head. So, since she spent a lot of time in a hospital, you have many enemies that look like nurses, and when you're in the hospital area, kids used to pick on her, so you have many monsters that resemble children when you're in the schoolhouse, and many of the other monsters that are more vague tend to look as if they either have no skin, or as if most of their skin is charred or burned, which is fitting since most of her injuries are akin to that, since she was almost burned alive in a house fire many years ago. So that's all there. But then in Silent Hill 2, it's completely different. All the monsters are different, some parts of the town look different, and many other things change. Now, some people say that it's just merely a different approach to direction. Some people will say that Silent Hill 1 and 3 have more of a narrative focus, whereas Silent Hill 2 has a character focus, so symbolism being based on characters rather than individual elements of the town and the story of the town make them different. However, what I'm going to say in opposition or defense of this theory is the idea of a sort of control to this town in regards to what people see and what they interact with. And that's basically this. Alessa is the one who is in control of the town during the events of Silent Hill 1. But then, depending on what ending you get, either she dies or she leaves the town in one way or another. So, where does that leave us with? That basically leaves us with a large town filled with supernatural power and nobody to control or guide it. So, since we had a godlike being, in this case Alessa, controlling it and giving it form, what that would mean then is that anyone else who enters the town from that point forward would have everything that they see altered based on what they think about, because of the fact that since a god was controlling it and that's why everyone saw what she saw, every other human is on a level playing field in regards to mystical power or godlike abilities. So, that would mean that every single person sees their own interpretation of their psyche or their inner problems because of the fact that nobody has control over the town anymore. The manifestations are unique to each person who enters the town. They see the monsters differently, they see the town differently, because of the fact that since everyone has equal rooting, at least in comparison to Alessa, who is like a godlike being, the manifestations are only going to change based on the local or immediate presence of a person who is there. And that's why when these characters interact, sometimes you will be able to see the various hallucinations of other people. So, to cite one example, there's a moment where James approaches Angela on a staircase, and everything is burning down. And she's not reacting to it, and James isn't reacting to it. But he mentions it. He actually says, "You need to watch out for this fire." And she says, "It's like this for me all the time." Meaning that, for one reason or another, since Angela was there first, we have the impression that she's the one who has control over the manifestations in that local area. And because of this, you are seeing a glimpse into what her world is like. So, that's just one example. And that's how this sort of fits into it. So when you go back to other games in the series, such as 3, you have Heather, who actually has part of Alessa inside of her, which would give her a high amount of priority over other people in the town in regards to the manifestations, or everyone else, who again are human level, so they therefore see only what they think they should see or what they're supposed to see based on their own inner machinations. So that's why this works this way. There's no one to control it, so everyone basically controls their own little versions of Silent Hill. Now, how do we apply this symbolically? Well, first off, we have to point out something here. The idea is that this is strict symbolism. What I mean by that is sometimes people will use symbolism in a sort of loose, fragmented way to defend various pieces of art, games, film, or fiction if somebody does not like it. So when you have something like Tree of Life or something where it's incredibly vague and nothing makes sense, people will say, "Oh, it's symbolic, it's art, you don't understand it." And that is true, I don't understand it, but I think that's because it's a poorly made film and not just because its symbolism is too deep for my little mind. So that's vague and loose symbolism used to make excuses for the lack of quality. In this case, the symbolism is strict because even though you can still have your own personal interpretations based on what happens, all of them have the root idea of taking a symbolic element and connecting it to whichever character is closest to or most related to it. So we're going to use Angela as a small basis here. The reason why she sees everything is burning is supposed to imply that she burned her house down in the past. It's also implied through dialogue and other pieces of imagery that she was most likely molested by her father. Hence why when you enter a boss room with her in it, the boss explicitly looks to be an amalgam of someone humping, mounting, or raping someone else. And on the more obvious side of things, the walls are a bunch of holes with pistons going in and out of them. I wonder what that could possibly mean. Then there's the implication of Eddie within the town. It's implied that he may have killed people in the past, and his guilt over that would imply that he sees many things relating to corpses or things that are rotting or decaying, because every time you see him, he is vomiting. James has seen many things on his end of his visions and interpretations, but it's never been to the point where it brought him to the point of hurling. He's never actually vomited during any course of the game, even though there's many gross things that he sees, implying that what Eddie sees is significantly worse. Then you have characters such as Laura, who they're relatively young and naive, and for all intents and purposes considered innocent on most parts, so they don't have anything as far as a guilty conscience. They might be a brat and they might have done bad things in the past, but depending on how old they are and how they think, children are relatively innocent, quote unquote, comparatively, and therefore they don't have a guilty conscience in order to, I guess, demonize them in this town. So she's very confused when anyone mentions something in regards to a monster. She has no idea what you're talking about throughout the entirety of the game. So these are all various things that are seen as strict symbolism, because even though you can make your own ideas about this, you know what most of these things mean. I mean, there's some things you can say about the pistons coming in and out of the walls of the room that you find Angela in, but the most obvious one is the one that is commonly cited as correct, especially because we have director's commentary to back up a lot of her assertions. James is the one that is most heavily the focus because you see most things from his perspective. The main one being that he has a lot of pent-up aggression and lust. You can tell through symbolism that James has a lot of pent-up lust and aggression, mainly focused on events from his past, because most of his enemies are feminine in nature. The thing that's contorted in within its own skin, again, has a relatively feminine shape. The mannequin legs are based off a female mannequin, not a male one. The nurses are also female and highly over-sexualized, so on and so forth. The only one that is not clearly feminine is Pyramid Head, and that one's supposed to represent torture/masculinity, especially because you see it raping other monsters within this town. And there's a reason why the monsters look how they're supposed to. The leg mannequin thing is supposed to be based on the idea of objectification. The idea of, oh, well, you know, like that woman has a nice pair of legs. Well, in this case, it's literally nothing but the nice legs, and they're coming to try and kill you. So, that's one thing. The nurses are supposed to be a combination of stress and lust, because Since James's wife was in the hospital for a long amount of time, that meant they clearly couldn't have relations, so coming to a hospital made him angry and aggressive and also, lustful for his wife. So all of the nurses have, the small hips and the large busts and the legs and the various moaning sounds. So what that implies is that thinking of a hospital reminds him of these things, hence why they look like that. And there's many other things that can be put into play for it. But there's other theories out there. Some people say that underneath Pyramid Head's mask is James himself. And on top of that, you can actually see various corpses throughout the game. And it's confirmed from outside sources and other people tinkering around with the files that the character model used for these corpses is the exact same one as James. And it's kind of trippy when you're playing a game and you literally find your own body scattered around various places of this town. And this is all just very surface level stuff, but supposed to imply a sort of significant amount of thought that went into making this game. Because having an explanation for the monsters and everything else is really, really good, but having further explanation as to why they look like that, why they're there, that has something that's more of a psychological or mental, intellectual level, gives it the depth and intelligence that can make it a great game. Because having a game that's just, oh, zombies are here because zombies, that's fun, but it wouldn't have as nearly much of a lasting impression as all of the really intelligently designed monster character designs from Silent Hill 2. This is mainly just surface level stuff. We can get a little bit deeper as we are going to mention various theories on Pyramid Head in the next video. We have many ideas that he could be. Is he a protector? Is he a assassin? Is he meant to challenge you? Is he meant to kill you? Is he meant to protect you? Is he actually a good guy or a bad guy? Is he yourself? We have no idea, because there's many different ideas, but we will be presenting them more in depth in the next video. So, until then, see you guys next time.